Hi, so this I'm doing a short recording here, a short video, I'm sorry, of MLA citation, both in-text citation and work citation. This is one of the core things that you need to be able to do in English classes and 1102, in pretty much every academic class you'll be taking. There'll be citation. We're going to focus on MLA because that's what English does. So first off, what I want to do is take you to the OWL textbook and walk through the in-text citation basics and the works cited basics. So here we go. So if you come over here, you click on OWL in-text online textbook, and then you click here. This brings you to the Purdue Online Writing Lab, OWL. If you scroll down to, let's try it this way, research and citation, MLA style. You should probably read all these when you looking for some pleasure reading. For our purposes, we're going to go right to here. We're going to go first to the works cited page basic format. That's what you'll be working with. So here are the basic rules for a works cited page. Double space all citations, don't skip spaces between entries. I disagree with that, but if you do it this way for me, I'm fine. Your works cited page is a separate page. Again, this is something that when you're doing big papers is fine. I guess you're not wasting paper. You can do that however you want. You do need to label works cited. Make sure that you center the works cited at the top of wherever your page is going. For online sources, this is important. You should have the URL, or you can use the DOI. Follow these rules. This is important. Last name, first name, because you'll be alphabetizing later, so you always use the last name and the first name. Does that make sense? So there's that. Now, if we come down here to there are different kinds of citations here. Electronic sources, you should probably take a look at. You kids, and now you millennials, you're always using your phones. Get off my lawn. Anyway, so the basic citation order, you will not have all of these for most of them, but you'll have some of these. And what you do is you put these in the order that they show up. So you get the author's name, last name first, article name. So if you don't have an author, then the first word in your citation will be this article name. Title of the website. If you're citing an entire website, that's not great, but it is what it is. It gives you information to get here. Don't just cite Google. I've actually had students who, for their works cited page, have Google. That's not real helpful. Google is the entirety of everything that's online in the past and in the present. You need to be a little more specific. Government websites, a lot of times people will be working with these, or department websites. Let's see here, where are we at? Sorry, I'm going so fast. Tweets and YouTube videos. These are things that come up from time to time and that I've encountered. So if you're citing a tweet or you're citing a YouTube video, then there you go. All right, does that make sense? So let's scroll back up here and works cited. Where is it? Electronic, no, in-text citations. The basics, this is what I'm looking for. So remember when I said earlier that you need to, when you have an author, it's a last name, first name. You do that because they'll be alphabetized, and we'll go over that in a minute. But for right now, this is how you do an in-text citation. You got Wordsworth stated. Wordsworth is the author who's being quoted. Wordsworth stated that romantic poetry was marked by a spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings in quotation marks, as on page 263 of the Wordsworth article. If you don't use Wordsworth in the in-text citation, you need to include that name. So again, so your reader can go and find this in the works cited page, and we'll go over that in a minute. In-text citations are printed with a known author. See how that works? Kenneth Burke. Here, Burke is in the parenthetical citation because he was not used here. Corporate, no known author. If you don't have an author, then use the title or whatever comes up first in that cascade of information that we looked at earlier. Citing by multiple authors, take a look at this if you need it. This is a reference. Multiple works by the same author. This happens a lot. If you've got two or more articles by the same author, then you need to use the author's name in the signal phrase, and then here the first unique phrase from the article that it's in. Does that make sense? The one more thing I want to show you is citing indirect sources. I'll show you an example of this. Here, Ravitch was quoted by Wiseman. So you've got Ravitch argues that high schools are pressured to act as social service centers and they don't do that well. Then it's important to quote it in QTD and Wiseman. So your works cited page will have an article, will have Wiseman as the citation, and Ravitch is contained within this article. Okay? Cool. So if you have any questions, email me. I will be happy to answer your questions. Otherwise, carry on. Hi, folks. I'm back. So now is a quick walkthrough of citations and how the relationship of the in-text citation to the works cited citation. So this is the article we're going to be working with, Forwarding Literacy in Malala, Resisting Commodification Through Cooperation, Context, and Kinship. This is in the College English Journal. It's an up-to-date journal that uses MLA, so that's why I'm using it. But first off, I want to talk a little bit about the works cited page. So here, take a look at this, and this is the works cited page with 1, 2, 3, and 4.5 pages of citations. If you don't set your works cited page up following the rules, people will never be able to find your citations, and if your professor can't easily find your citation, he's just going to accuse you of academic dishonesty, and we don't want that. So a few things. Remember when I said use a hanging indent? This is what a hanging indent looks like. You've got the first word of the citation at the far left margin, and then you come in a half an inch or like 5 spaces for the subsequent lines. And what that does is that makes the first word stand out. Remember when I said earlier that you use the last name for Kara Poe Alexander, Gloria Enzaldua, Devin Atala, David Barton, etc. But you got the last name, and I'll show you why that's important in a minute. So you've got the last name, you've got a space in between citations. That's important too. This is all designed to make this word or this word stand out for your reader. So you'll notice it's alphabetized. A's, B's, over here, L's, M's. Where you got an author with multiple works being cited. Here, in this case, it's Powell. You do it alphabetically with the title, identity. I comes before R, so that's why this is lined up this way. And you've got the straight line through here instead of writing Powell, comma, Katrina again. Most of MLA's rules make sense. I honestly don't understand why you have to do it this way, but you have to do it this way. All right, so just keep that in mind when you're doing your research and your citing. So coming back over here, A, B, C, D. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk through a few citation examples that you'll probably encounter. This here is a basic citation with a text. When it's a paper text, when it's a hardcover like this thing is paper. It's writer. It's on page 175. So if you go to your works cited page and you sing the ABC song, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, you come to the R's, writer, Phyllis Mansell. It tells you exactly here where to find this. In this case, this is a literary journal, much like the one that I'm working with, Literacy and Composition, Volume 3, pages 175 to page 187. It was published in 2015. It's got all the information here that you need, that your reader would need if your reader wanted to go and actually find this article. And that's how quickly your citations need to work. Even though it's 3 pages in, because you've alphabetized it with the last name, it's very easy to find. Does that make sense? So let's move on to the next one. Here, Bennett. You go back to the ABCs and you only have to do to the B's. Let me find that. Okay, there we go. Cool. So Bennett. Now, granted, I've made it a little easier by highlighting it, but I highlighted it so that you'd be able to focus on it more than me being able to find it. Now, the difference here, the reason I'm showing you this one is because this is an online article. It was not a hard copy paper like the last one. So there's no page number, but there is when it was accessed. This is really important. When you last look at something online and are citing it, you need to include that date because the nature of stuff online is that it changes. And so you need to be able to document that when you looked at it, that's what the information was. Does that make sense? Cool. Something else here you'll notice, here you've got writer and then you've got text beneath using that information. This is what I want you to be doing in our class especially. And I'll talk more about this later, but just keep that in mind. Don't end paragraphs with quotations. If you do that and for papers from me, I'll take off points. It's okay to do that by the MLA rules, but I have a more specific rule about it. I'll explain that early next week. Here, I want to walk through this because this comes up a lot. The problem with these representations is that they commodify Malala, using her as a tool for particular arguments to mobilize populations and agendas rather than seeing her in her own right and personhood. Women's studies scholar Emily Bent argues that these depictions reinforce a colonial power structure through the dangerous image it constructs of third world vulnerability. Quoted in Thomason, Shakul, 236. You come over here and you look for Thomas. Where the heck is Thomas? Right here. See how easy that was? I did not even highlight it. You still find it. So you're not looking in the B's for Bent because it's not there. It's over here. It's over here. I'm sorry. This is why you put in the QTD in. Does that make sense? If you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you more about this. We can have phone conversations. But this is very important. And again, there's a lot of text afterwards using this small quote. If you'll notice the size of this quote, it's minuscule. It's 3 words. This quote is more than 3 words, but not very many. What I don't want you to do is grab huge chunks of text from places and use them as filler in your papers. It's pretty obvious when people do that. When you're quoting, you just take the most important part that you really want to work with, and that's what you have, okay? So one last quote, and then I will see you in the funny papers. Here we go. So this is the last example I want to show you. This is called a long quote. It's more than, in MLA, if it's more than 4 lines, you have to format your quote differently. In the end, Yusufazi seems to accept the place that ambiguity and instability have in her life while still recognizing the pain that comes with being in transitional spaces. At the end of the book, Yusufazi writes, "In March, we moved from an apartment to a rented house on a leafy street, but it feels as if we were camping in it. All our belongings are still in SWAT," and blah, blah, blah. You'll notice here, even though this is a long quote, something's been taken out. You've got 4 dots. This is called an ellipses. This is a very specific punctuation mark that you use in academic writing. When you remove something, you put in 3 dots. If you remove text and included in the text you removed is a sentence ending punctuation mark, you add the 4th one. So in this case, there's 4 dots here, so that tells the reader that a large chunk of text has been removed. It's important to do that. You'll also notice that it's all indented, 5 spaces. The text is a little bit smaller than the other text. It's double spaced here and here to further set this chunk of text out, and there are no quotation marks. The spacing here, the size of the text, this indentation all makes sense from a visual standpoint. It helps the reader see that all this text is from somewhere else. It's not you, which is why over 4 lines. That's why the MLA has you do this with over 4 lines. What doesn't make sense for me is why there are no quotation marks. That just seems random to me. And I don't make the rules. So if I don't make the rules, I have to follow them. You have to follow them, even when they don't make sense. Part of life. Okay? Does that make sense? So again, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. We'll be working with this. We'll be working with this in context with your papers. So do your best. Alrighty? Thank you and good night.